Well, welcome back to a brand new year in our parish. We're so glad that you're here today to kick off this new year with us, the Sunday after Labor Day. And today we begin our regular preaching season that goes from the Sunday after Labor Day until a little after Mother's Day. And we're so glad that you're here because we also begin a new message series for the fall that we're calling God's Not Dead. God is not dead. And we're so excited by this new series. The title of that series actually comes from a book and a movie that came out in 2014 by the same name about a young college student enrolled in a philosophy course taught by an atheist professor who demands that in order to pass the class, each student must sign a declaration proclaiming that God is dead. After the student refuses to sign the document, his professor requires him to engage in a series of public debates with him in front of the class in an effort to prove that God does exist. The student ultimately wins the debate on the evidence and even changes the heart and mind of his skeptical professor. So we're kicking off this year with this amazing series about the proof of God. For the next 6 weeks, we're going to go through some of that scientific and philosophical evidence for the existence of God. It's all part of our new parish theme for this year that we're calling Grow to Go, because we're going to be spending the year reflecting on how to grow spiritually so that we can be ready to go and love other people as Jesus commanded. When you think about it, growing in faith is really the most important thing you can do. Because when you grow in faith, everything else in your life gets better. Your relationships become more enriching, your work more satisfying, your family obligations more meaningful. And our vision here at St. Brendan is to spark curiosity in spiritual growth. And a big aspect of that growth is coming to a reasoned understanding of the basis of our faith, why we believe what we believe. So this first series is about the logical basis of our faith in God. And each message series this year will be similar. The next series, beginning later in this fall, will be called The Case for Christ, and will examine the evidence for Jesus as the Son of God. During Advent and Christmas, we'll look at all the reasons why we should expect miracles from God. One of the greatest of those being the birth of Jesus Christ himself. And in the new year, we'll reflect on the logic behind following the teachings of Christ and living the way he did. And in our final series for Easter, called What on Earth Am I Here For?, we're going to focus on how God gives us a rational purpose to fulfill in life. And we'll never be happy until we do it. Now, right off the bat, you may have a fundamental objection to this series. Faith, you may say, is just that. It's faith. It can't be explained. It doesn't have to be justified. It's not subject to scientific investigation or corroboration. It lives in its own realm, and in fact, you may say, it shows a remarkable lack of humility to try to prove our faith. It is true, as the first reading we heard today tells us, that ultimately we cannot fully know the mind of the inscrutable God or what he intends. And the psalm today reminds us that we're like the changing grass, which at dawn springs up anew, but by evening withers and fades. And we gain wisdom by humbly realizing how limited our lives and understanding really are compared to God. Scarce do we guess the things on earth, says the first reading. But when things are in heaven, who can search them out? All of that is true. But as we'll explain repeatedly during this series, science and religion, faith and reason, are not two separate spheres of human understanding. They are not enemies. Rather, they mutually support each other in helping us to come to a better understanding of our universe. In fact, one of the most respected saints in church history, St. Anselm, coined a phrase in the 4th century that is the foundation of all theological exploration. His motto was, faith seeking understanding. In other words, faith prompts a search for deeper understanding, but that understanding comes about through the use of reason and logic. See, as Catholics, we don't have to check our brains at the doors of the church. Rather, we're encouraged to explore the rational basis for our beliefs, and as we'll see, there are many. In the gospel reading, for instance, Jesus sets out 3 conditions that are necessary for following him. First, he says, there has to be a commitment greater than one's attachment to family members. Now, hating your relatives is not what Jesus meant literally, even though the English translation is the word hate. What Jesus was doing was using an exaggerated Jewish idiom to stress the point that we have to love him more than anything or anyone else. Now, second thing that we need to do to follow Jesus is to engage in self-sacrifice and dedication when what he refers to as the cross. And the third condition is renouncing all of our possessions to follow him. Putting all of our distractions aside. What all 3 of these conditions have in common is a single-minded focus on the things of God. The point is that God wants us to be interested in him, and it's not prideful to investigate and try to understand God's creation. As we'll see, God has created a universe made just for us, and even gave us the perfect vantage point to discover all that he created. In fact, that's the first piece of evidence that we'll look at in this series that strongly points to the existence of God. So let's take a look at that evidence. In the scientific exploration of the origin and development of the universe, there's a line of reasoning that goes all the way back to the Middle Ages called the Kalam cosmological argument. And it has 3 simple steps. Step 1, whatever begins to exist must have a cause. Nothing exists, nothing comes into existence without something else causing it. That's common sense. Step 2, the universe began to exist. Therefore, step 3, the universe has a cause. In the 19th century, most scientists believed that the universe was eternal. It had always existed and was not caused by anything. But in the 1920s, the Russian mathematician Alexander Friedmann and Georges Lemaitre, a Belgian astronomer and Catholic priest, developed a theory of the universe's origin called the Big Bang. You've probably heard of it. In fact, there's a TV show named after it, The Big Bang Theory. Virtually every reputable scientist now agrees that the universe had a beginning that was caused by something else. In fact, one of the most notable atheists, Stephen Hawking himself, said that almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning. The Nobel Prize-winning physicist Steven Weinberg describes it like this: in the beginning, there was an explosion. Within the tiniest split second, the temperature hit 100,000 million degrees centigrade, and the universe was filled with light. In about 3 minutes, roughly the time it takes to make a sandwich, all the matter there is and ever will be was produced. As the agnostic astronomer Robert Jastrow eventually conceded, the essential element in the astronomical and biblical accounts of Genesis is the same. It all began with light and a flash of energy. And that is exactly what God says in the book of Genesis when he creates the universe. Let there be light. Now, since the universe had a beginning, it therefore must have had a cause. But if the birth of the universe had a cause, that cause had to be outside of time and space. I mean, you can't stand within time and space and create time and space, so it had to be something that was outside time and space. It had to be, it could not be a physical reality. It had to be immaterial. And there are only 2 types of things that can be timeless and immaterial: mathematical entities, which obviously can't create anything, or an intelligent mind that brought everything into existence, or what we call God for short. There simply is no other plausible way to explain the origin of a finite universe from a timeless cause. And while atheists present a plethora of alternative explanations like quantum theory, which says that things like a whole universe can pop into and out of existence for no reason whatsoever, those explanations at this point are entirely theoretical in nature and seem to me to be more like grasping at straws. But not only was the universe caused by an intelligent mind, the evidence strongly suggests that it was made just for us. In 1973, Cambridge physicist Brandon Carter delivered a groundbreaking paper at a prestigious scientific conference. At the center of his paper was a concept called the anthropic principle, which essentially says that all the seemingly arbitrary and unrelated constants in physics have one strange thing in common. They are precisely the values you need if you want to have a universe capable of producing life. It's this incredible fine-tuning of the cosmos that is a key piece of evidence for God, a master designer of the universe. The once skeptical Paul Davies, former professor of theoretical physics, put it this way: "Through my scientific work, I have come to believe more and more strongly that the physical universe is put together with an ingenuity so astonishing that I cannot believe that our existence in this universe is a mere quirk of fate, an accident of history, a blip in the great cosmic drama." When scientists talk about the fine-tuning of the universe, they're generally referring to the extraordinary balancing of the fundamental laws and parameters of physics. The result is that the universe has precisely the right conditions to sustain life. And the coincidences are simply too amazing to have been the result of chance. Even the tiniest adjustment would throw everything off and make life impossible. For example, the slightest increase or decrease in gravity, in the force of gravity, by even 1 part in 10,000 billion, that's a lot of zeros. I don't even know how many zeros that is. But even a change in that small amount would render life impossible. And gravity is just one of more than 30 separate physical or cosmological parameters that require precise calibration in order to produce a life-sustaining universe. Now, atheists try to get around this by speculating that there could be billions of universes out there incapable of supporting life, and well, we just got lucky. It was luck of the draw. But that's a purely conceptual idea with no scientific proof behind it. Think about it this way. If I bet you $1,000 that I could flip a coin and get heads 50 times in a row and then did it, wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't you take me up on that bet? But then what if I did it? What if I flipped that coin 50 times and it came up on heads every single time? Would you be more likely to say that, oh, well, that was a result of a 1 in a million billion chance? Or would you more likely conclude that I had rigged the game, that I was using a trick coin? Or suppose you were hiking and came across rocks across a valley arranged in a pattern that spelled out the words, "Welcome to the mountains," and then it had your name on it. "Welcome to the mountains, Father Roger." Would you be more likely to conclude that some earthquake or rock slide randomly produced that configuration? Or would you be more likely to say, well, somebody came out there and did that intentionally as a practical joke? The same is true for the fine-tuning of the universe. Random chance could be involved. We cannot negate that fact. But isn't it much more plausible that it was designed intelligently that way to sustain life? Plus, you would need some kind of generator, right, to crank out all those billions of universes, even if the atheists were right that there are multiverses out there. And where did that generator come from? As Greg Easterbrook, contributing editor for The Atlantic Monthly and scientist, said, the idea of billions of universes rests on assumptions that would be laughed out of town if they came from a religious text. No. A more likely explanation for the fine-tuning of the universe that uniquely supports life builds on what we already know. What we already know is that intelligent beings create intelligent things. So the existence of a supermind like God makes all the sense in the world. As Vera Kistiakowsky, retired professor of physics at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and former president of the Association for Women in Science, put it, the exquisite order displayed by our scientific understanding of the physical world calls for the divine. Centuries ago, the scientist Nicholas Copernicus put us in our place by correctly arguing that the universe does not revolve around us. We revolve around the sun. And many scientists since then have believed, as a result, that there is nothing exceptional about Earth, because life could just happen anywhere in the universe if the right conditions are met. But according to the former atheist Lee Strobel in his book, The Case for a Creator, more and more scientists are studying the mind-boggling convergence of scores of extraordinary coincidences that make intelligent life possible on Earth, and concluding that this can't possibly be an accident. Rather than being one ordinary planet among billions, Earth now appears to be uncommon. Its location, size, composition, structure, atmosphere, temperature, internal dynamics, and many intricate cycles that are essential to life testify to the degree to which our planet is uniquely, exquisitely, and precariously balanced to support human life. And if Earth is special among the planets of the universe, then so are we. The problem with atheism is that it inevitably leads to a crushing sense of insignificance. The famous atheist Richard Dawkins once said that the universe has no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. But the truth is that life has incredible meaning because the universe was made by an intelligent mind, by God, just for us. It was made for us to unearth our unique and infinite value within the structure of the cosmos. But just like St. Paul refused to force the slave owner in the second reading today to do the right thing, God will not force that meaning on us. God's not in the forcing business. We must choose to discover it. We must choose to look for it. In the midst of the unspeakable horrors of a Nazi concentration camp during World War II, Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl came to realize that humanity's ultimate need is for significance, and that the greatest task for any person is to find meaning in his or her life. Come along with us during this year of spiritual growth to discover more deeply, more fully, that meaning and significance. A meaning and significance which is rooted in the absolute truth that God is not dead.